believe I spent so much money on a computer for somebody who's not even my boyfriend anymore.
2 months earlier.
Hey guys, it's Zoe. Today is part 2 of our 2-part series with Hyte brand, where I'm going to be putting my boyfriend's PC in the brand spanking new Taro Milk Y70. It's this lovely shade of lavender, which happens to be my boyfriend's favorite color. A lot of the parts in his current PC build are absolutely fine, so they're just going to be transferred over to the Y70, and he's getting handed down some of the parts from my original Y70 Touch build, which is probably what you guys subscribed to me from. It was that black PC. But now I got this pink PC, which was part 1 of this series. So if you want to see how I made this custom water-cooled strawberry milk Y70 PC, go watch the last video. I don't really have a notes section for this video, considering it's a lot more straightforward than the last 2 builds. My first build, I did a whole notes section on the components of a computer. My second build, I did a whole notes section on custom water cooling. But today, I think we're just going to take a more laid-back route and just move some parts into this case and give Brandon a little bit of a room makeover. And of course, as for components, I'm not sponsored by anyone for this video. I'm not sponsored by Nvidia. I just found this shirt on eBay and thought it was cool. But I am gifted this case by Hyte, and I'm super appreciative of it. Hyte has always been super supportive to my computer builds in my channel, so thank you so much again, Hyte. And future component brands that want to sponsor me, find my email, let's chat. Because a lot of these builds come out of my own wallet, and let's just say a girl's in debt because of computers, and it's a little embarrassing, but I view it as an investment into the channel. I'm gonna stop rambling and jump straight into the sketch portion of this video. You guys know me, I'm a very hands-on learner, and I like to have a vague general sketch of what I believe the PC is gonna look like after it's built before I build it, so I don't end up screwing myself over. I can make little tweaks and adjustments. And for Brandon's PC in particular, his favorite color is lavender. I wanted to go a more pastel goth route, but make it a little bit more masculine, so I'm going with the theme of Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein, because I know the green tones of Frankenstein pair really nicely with purple. My lavender marker was very dry and dying, so this PC looks a lot darker than it actually would be, but just infer that it's lavender. And I'm gonna preface this before I even start this build. My camera does not like the shade lavender, and you will notice that the Taro Milk Y70 on camera can pull a little pastel blue, and I promise y'all that's just my camera itself. You'll see other things that I'm adding to the build that pull pastel blue as well. It's my camera not doing it justice, and I will try to fix it in post to be more realistic to the actual color. I might be ignorant, I've never had taro milk tea before, and googling what taro is, it is a sweet yet nutty Taiwanese drink made out of taro root, milk, sugar, and tapioca pearls. It sounds delicious. Looking at actual taro milk though, it is not usually this bright and vibrant of a purple, because taro root is just like slightly purple, so I'm guessing they add a little oomph in the color department just for attention value, but it does sound very yummy. While I finish sketching, let's hop over to Brandon's room and watch him take apart his current PC build. This is Brandon's old setup. It's not very color coordinated, it's kind of teenage boy, and Brandon wants a lot more lavender. So that's what we're doing today, and I'm having him take apart his own PC because Brandon's super talented as he is, did this snowblind mod on the inside of this NZXT H510 Elite case. That's the same case that I had before I upgraded to the black Y70 Touch, and I don't want to mess with his mod at all because I know he wants to salvage a lot of those parts, so I'm having him take apart his own case just to be safe because he's the one who installed the mod. It's called a snowblind mod because it's inspired by an iBuyPower case from like a decade ago where they used the glass panel of the case as a separate display. I think that's so cool. Brandon's super talented, and he will be uploading a tutorial sometime in the near future after he finishes editing it, so I'm going to link all of his socials in the description below just so you guys can keep your eye out for that. So very carefully, Brandon salvaged all the bits and pieces from that mod to use in future projects. He removed his graphics card, CPU cooler, all of the fans, and his motherboard, and lastly this power supply, and look at how nasty this old case is. Ew, Brandon. And as you guys remember in the last build, I painted my heat sinks with acrylic paint, a lovely shade of pastel pink to kind of blend in with the case, because just having a black motherboard in an all colorful case very much so stands out, and Brandon's going to be doing the same but in a different way. So right now he's removing his M.2s out of his motherboard and also removing his RAM. He will be taping off his motherboard to the best of his ability and taking it out outside to spray paint. And the reason why we're going this spray painting route this time around is because in the last build I was fortunate enough to find 3 pastel pink fans that I really liked and matched the color of my case to go on top of my radiator to kind of blend into the case. We had no luck finding lavender fans that matched Brandon's case, so what we're going to do instead is Brandon's going to spray paint his heat sinks, and alternatively he bought a 3-pack of super cheap non-RGB black fans that he's going to be painting lavender as well. That's why spray paint works better in this situation. And after the motherboard was all masking taped up, Brandon went outside and gave everything very slow and light accumulative layers of lavender spray paint, giving everything adequate time to dry in between and bringing it back inside just to take the masking tape off, and it came out gorgeous, stunning. Honestly, kind of wish I did spray paint for my motherboard, but you live and you learn. And before I get the comments, what about the static? Brandon's wearing an anti-static bracelet. There was no static, it worked perfectly fine, and your heat sinking properties are not going to be compromised by a thin coat of spray paint. You're good. Motherboards are a lot stronger than y'all give them credit for. And with Brandon's motherboard put back together, now it's time for my part, the fun part, the customizing part. NVIDIA, sponsor me. And yes, you're gonna recognize a lot of these components because they are just hand-me-downs from our last builds. We are not rich. We're starting with unboxing this beautiful Taro Milk Y70. Like I said before, it does pull more blue on camera, but it looks very pretty in lavender here. I'm just getting off of all of the excess packaging and making sure it's a clean slate to start building it. And as we know from the last 2 builds, Y70 cases are vertical mount cases, so I'm going to be removing this mounting bracket from my graphics card before we insert the motherboard back in. And they're super easy to mount and unmount. It's just 2 screws along the outside of the case and 2 screws into the bottom of the case. Take this and the screws and put them in the safe place for later. Next, we're just removing the 2 glass panels left over. From the back, there are 2 screws holding in this side panel, and the middle panel is held in by 2 screws along the bottom and 2 screws along the top, and it just pops out like the other 2. Just be careful to put those screws in a place where you don't lose them. And we're reinstalling the motherboard now that Brandon's got the M.2s and RAM back in, just with the 8 or 9 screws that follow along the outside of the motherboard. And I'm using these very papery feeling anti-static gloves. They're not necessary, it's just an extra safety precaution that I'm not bringing any static into this case when I'm putting the motherboard in. And after the motherboard's in, that's where we get to get crafty. Remember in my black Y70 touch build where I used pink medical tape to wrap around the tubes of my CPU cooler? Well, unfortunately this time around, like the fans, it is impossible to find lavender medical tape. I never thought it would be, but it was. And the tape we ended up getting is not the same shade whatsoever and not big enough to wrap around. So I had to get crafty here and I mixed up a shade of lavender and acrylic paint. Knowing that it's going to dry darker than this light pastel lavender I'm using, I went in and I painted the tubes, which no, it does not affect the heating of this. A light little layer of acrylic paint doesn't do anything. So I went in and I painted those tubes. And while that paint's drying, Brandon's installing the power supply into the back of the case. And if we can remember back to that black Y70 touch build again, I made 3 vinyl covers for the little logos in the middle of the fans on my 4060 Ti graphics card, and I'm just gonna go in with some of the lavender paint and paint over those vinyl stickers that I made. Worst case scenario, I can peel it up or make black covers again. But I kinda have a vision for the RGB on that graphics card, and it wouldn't be a vampire doll build if it didn't have an abundance of useless RGB. So of course I got Brandon his own set of the Lee & Lee Streimers. I feel like those really make or break an RGB build. I love them so much. Another classic staple of a vampire doll PC build will be using an abomination amount of these NZXT RGB core fans. They are a little annoying and tedious to use with the RGB hubs you have to put in the back, but they are honestly the nicest fans you can use for using fan covers. And obviously to my younger audience, this is a joke. Do not eat silica gel. Don't get me in no lawsuits. That was a joke. And in full transparency, Brandon and I often use these RGB core fans to stylize our fan covers on our website too, because the light shines through so nicely, especially in the middle, creating such a nice silhouette for our fan covers. And these are our brand spanking new Universal Studios inspired Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, and Lightning Bolt fan covers available on our website as we speak. I'll link them down in the description, of course. Just be mindful while making your order that wait times can take up to 2 to 3 weeks to be made because we are not a big business. We are just 2 people running 1 3D printer, only able to make 1 round of orders at a time. all while still working our full-time in real life jobs and having a chronic illness myself. So there is a little bit of a weight buffer while me and Brandon are working on orders, but rest assured they will get to you. We do offer international shipping, and we are just two people trying our hardest. In the future, I'm hoping to make enough money from YouTube and doing these YouTube videos that we can get a second 3D printer and streamline the process of making these orders a bit faster. Now I'm just installing that NZXT RGB strip. I had 2 of them in the black Y70 build, and I kept 1 for my pink build and saved this other one for Brandon's build. And as for fan placement in these Y70s, I found on Reddit, although the back panel is made for one 140 fan, if you have 2 120s, you can budge that top 120 as high up as you possibly can in the case and scoot your radiator on your CPU cooler forward about an inch, and you can efficiently fit 2 120 fans. I love the way it looks, and I know it's not ideally what this case was made for, but it looks so good that who can argue with it, right? Next, I'll be taking the 3 fans that Brandon spray painted, that lavender shade, and I'm going to be screwing them into the radiator portion of Brandon's CPU cooler. And can I just say, damn, look at that color matching. The acrylic paint on the tubing is not the same paint that's the spray paint on the fans. I am just very good at color matching, call it that neurodivergence and working as a graphic designer in my day job combination. I'm going to be taking the screws from before and screwing this radiator back into the top of the PEC case, leaving about an inch space in the back for that one fan that we budged in that's not necessarily supposed to be there. I'm gonna slide this case on its back and open up the bottom part of the chassis to install 2 more NZXT RGB core fans in the opposite direction for intake and outtake. I always get a million questions about this, and I don't often show it because it's not super interesting, but I do install extra fans into the bottom of my case for intake and outtake, and me and Brandon have never had any issues with temperatures or cooling or heating, not even with my new computer. Using rubbing alcohol, I cleaned off any of the old thermal paste and applied new thermal paste, and then off camera I changed the bracket from an AMD bracket to an Intel bracket for Brandon's computer and reinstalled the CPU cooler. I removed any protective film off of the graphics card vertical mounting bracket, and I reinstalled it back into the case so we can get our graphics card in. Working as a team to streamline the process, while I'm getting this screwed in, Brandon was getting the 24-pin and 8-pin Lee & Lee Strimer cables plugged in and ready to go in the back, just so I can plug in the graphics card with ease. After getting the mounting bracket installed, I'm going to remove these 2 slats on the front side so I can install my graphics card. And before the comments start shitting on the fact that it's a 4060 Ti, I want to express once again that me and Brandon are not rich. I originally bought this 4060 Ti when it was on sale, and it was much cheaper than a 4070 at the time, and we're upgrading Brandon from a 3060 Ti. Brandon and I don't have big budgets like some other PC building channels. We're used to running our components into the ground until they no longer work anymore, so any upgrade we can get we're incredibly grateful for. And guys, just like that, we're in the end stretch. I'm plugging in my streamers to my graphics card and my motherboard and reinstalling those glass panels that we took out at the beginning. That's why it was so important that you set those screws aside in a safe area so you can reuse them, but I do believe the case comes with a couple extra screws on the off chance you lose some. And I saved you guys the trouble of watching the super annoying cable management in the back, and these are the NZXT RGB controller panels that you have to plug your RGB fans into because for whatever reason they're not daisy chainable, and the controller panels only house X amount of fans, so we did end up having to use multiple in each build we do with this many fans. They're super annoying, they take up space in the back. NZXT, it's 2024, make them daisy chainable, figure out something, get rid of the controller hubs, they're so annoying. Not to end on such a harsh note, but let's see if she posts. And of course she does, because I've never had a computer not post. And let's do the final peel and reveal. Off camera, we gutted and rearranged his room a bit. I put up some purple shower curtains on his wall because we're not allowed to paint in our rental. His mouse pad is one of our purple zombie RGB mouse pads from our website. I also put in the little zombie figurine I painted a couple videos ago. And on his wall are some of our photography prints from when we used to do street photography a lot. And yes, Brandon keeps a photo of me at his gaming setup. He loves me, what can I say? And I am so obsessed with how this purple Frankenstein theme turned out. His room looks so cool. that concludes our series in our second build of building in the Hyte Y70 Taro Milk. It is this lovely lavender color, and I love it. I love how it turned out, but it's not really for me. So Brandon, what do you think?
I love it.
I'm glad he loves it.
4 to 6 weeks later.
I just can't believe I spent so much money on a computer for somebody who's not even my boyfriend anymore.
Just kidding.
We're married.
What the fuck is it gonna take to get rid of this bitch? You can't get rid of me, bitch!
So yes, technically Brandon's no longer my boyfriend, he's my husband, and you guys got clickbaited. You can't blame the player, you gotta blame the game. Now I can already hear the comments, but Zoe, you didn't tell us you were engaged, and I'll be honest, 2 months ago Brandon and I didn't know we were gonna be married either. Now I know making this political makes me in turn less marketable in the long run, but I am in fact a girl with a septum piercing. I'm gonna make it political. After the election results were pulled, President-elect Donald Trump has called for military-led mass deportations of immigrants, along with the naturalization of birthright citizens, and leaving people who are on visas and DACA within the states very uncertain for the upcoming future. Additionally, Brandon and I live in a state where Governor Mike Braun believes that the Supreme Court was in the wrong for legalizing interracial marriage, and that it should be up to state by state. Surrounded by towns where a certain group of men who still live in their mother's basement and dress up in their bed sheets leave flyers such as these on local businesses and homes just a couple weeks ago.
I was born in Mexico but raised here since I was a toddler. With this upcoming presidency, the future of the program that even allows me to be here, DACA, is uncertain.
And with that, the answer was so clear to me that I needed to get married to Brandon and we needed to move out of this godforsaken state. And although it wasn't the ideal circumstances, I would still choose it all over again. Brandon and I started dating almost half a decade ago. We were fresh out of high school, still as teenagers, and over the last almost 5 years, we've really grown into the adults that we are today. Getting married was something that we had already planned to do in about a year or so when we moved back to my home state of Washington, but with the recent change of events, we ended up getting married a couple weeks ago. We didn't have a budget for a dress or a ceremony. I ended up sewing a veil together out of a scrap of a curtain, and we gathered our families together at a little local park that me and Brandon spent a lot of time walking and hiking at the beginning of our relationship, and had a lovely little ceremony with just our family, and it was ordained by our friend Josie. And I do have an unlisted YouTube video of our vows we wrote for each other. It's very sentimental, very sweet. We are both sobbing the entire time. And if you guys want the link to that unlisted YouTube video on the cheapest tier of our Patreon, for the people who really love us and want to support our relationship and see that, I will make the link available to you guys. It was super important to me that Brandon and I got married as soon as possible because, like I said before, me and Brandon are moving back to my home state of Washington, and my family has already moved back to my home state of Washington, so we got married within days of my family literally moving across the country. And we're moving back to Washington for a plethora of reasons, not just related to the election, but with my medical conditions getting worse over the last few years, it's been very hard for me to get adequate medical care while living in a medical desert. And an unfortunate announcement we have to give regarding us moving across country is, in order to not have to worry about the shipping fees of moving our vehicles, unfortunately, we are going to have to part ways with our hearses. And I know, it's before I even got to make that YouTube video that I promised a year ago. We'll be parting ways with both of our hearses to help fund the move, and also just shipping the hearses across the country would be tremendously expensive, and we cannot deal with that. But this is only a pause on our her story. Sorry, I wrote that in the script and it didn't come out as good as I thought it would. It is only a pause in our story, as we do plan to, after we get to Washington, settled in after the move, plan to buy a less rusty version of our 95 Fleetwood that we love so dearly. So this is just a pause to the story. It is not a complete end. And we still love hearses. We are big hearse enthusiasts. That story will just have to continue at a later point when we're settled in. That in an old hearse really isn't the most comfortable vehicle to drive, 2,000 miles across the country with 3 cats that are probably going to be screaming the entire time. And you know what car we're thinking of getting? Drum roll, please. A minivan. I'm actually so excited for a minivan. I'm ready to be a soccer cat mom. That's all I gotta say. A minivan is exciting. So that's where I gotta say, if my content gets a little bit more stagnant, if I'm picking up a brand deal in between computer build videos, or if I altogether have to take a step back from YouTube while I'm in the process of moving across the country and unpacking and getting settled in, just know that behind the scenes, both Brandon and I are working our asses off to get to a more comfortable environment for us to make content in. I just figured you guys deserved an update that me and Brandon are now married and we're gonna be moving, but please stay tuned. Married life has treated us both so well. Our relationship has never been stronger than it is now, and I'm so excited to build and grow and have more DIYs and PC videos together. I mean, at the end of the day, we are a team. It's not just me, he's behind this camera. We are a team working together, here to bring you guys so many cool videos in the upcoming future, and hopefully from a more comfortable environment for us and a better quality of life overall. This really is the most changing part of me and Brandon's lives thus far, and it's only gonna get better from here, and assume that the quality of our content's only gonna get better from here as well. It's just very changing, very rapid, very stressful right now. And if all of this was too political for you and you feel the need to leave a nasty comment regarding our marriage, I am a firm believer in executing my right to block on my own page. And I really love when you guys have conversation in the comments, but keep it nice, keep it cordial, because if you guys are nasty, you just will get blocked. That's the honest truth. I'm protecting my peace, I'm protecting my community. I only want people in my community who love and support me and Brandon and what we do as much as we want to love and support you guys back. And if that is not something that is within your threshold, please see your way out. Cordially. Now this conversation has strayed really far away from PC, so let's reel this conversation back in. You guys might want to get your components soon before tariffs hit. But if you guys don't want to hear it from me, y'all can hear it from Linus in one of his last videos. I'll tag it in the description. Has nothing to do with this video whatsoever. I just found it very interesting. And lastly, we just want to say thank you, Hyte, for gifting us these computer cases for this little series. And I know you guys are wondering what happened to the original black Y70 touch case that Hyte gifted me, and trust and believe that is going to be put into an entire new build in the next upcoming month or so. So stay tuned for that. And lastly, I just want to thank you guys in the community for being so loving, understanding, and patient with us, especially in the future as our content might get a little bit more stagnant while we're working on the move. But trust and believe that all of this work is going into much better content for you guys and a better standard of living for us. Linked below will be both my socials and Brandon's socials, so if you want to check some of his art stuff out too. He is super talented. I love to see his work, and I will always plug his stuff. Go look at it. I'll also tag Hyte. And any videos that might have inspired me or videos I watched while I was working on this computer build, I put in the description as well. And lastly, regarding the articles, I will put those articles that I mentioned towards the end there in the description as well if you guys want to fact check me. I love you guys so much, and stay tuned for many, many, many more cool YouTube videos as I go up. So love you guys. Bye!